Mashable, of course, it's been around for a while, but Mashable is at the same time reinventing itself. And they really have, for the first time, created a viable and ongoing network for millennials that focus very much on them, and they are indeed succeeding in growing and expanding that network. They could be perhaps described as the platform or the network of the social media age. And to tell us about that reinvention, here's Adam Ostrow. Adam, welcome.
Great, thank you for having me. And thank you everyone for coming to my session and not bailing out early to go to the pool. So what I want to talk to you guys today about is really how Mashable has gone about building what we like to think is one of the leading digital media companies for millennials over the last decade, and really starting from one of the most unlikeliest places you could think of for a site that's largely known for its coverage of technology and social media. We actually started back in 2005 in Banchory, Scotland, which is about as far away from Silicon Valley or New York as you can get. And our story is we had a 19-year-old founder named Pete Cashmore who, similar to the last speaker, rather than go off to college or go work for a big corporation, decided to start a blog from his bedroom and chronicle the social networking revolution, which was really just taking flight at the time back in 2005. If you think about what the social media landscape looked like in 2005, there was no Twitter, no Facebook was just a college-only social networking site. The iPhone was still a couple years away. Nonetheless, even though we were super early, from those early days, we really viewed the opportunity as not just covering the social networking revolution, but also figuring out how we could leverage emerging platforms to fuel our growth, right? How is this company that's completely bootstrapped, just a one-man blog, I joined in 2007, how are we going to take on these behemoth media companies? And what we did from very early on was focus on distribution. So in the early days in 2005, what social distribution meant for us was getting our content into Google Reader. When I joined in 2007, one of my first main areas of responsibility was creating content and getting it to the front page of Dig, if you remember that platform. Mashable became one of the first brands to really embrace Twitter and Facebook, and today we have millions of followers on both of those platforms. And today, in 2014, we're still really pursuing this. We have a team that's actually dedicated to emerging platforms at Mashable, so we're one of the largest brands on Instagram, on Pinterest, on Vine. We actually have someone that works out of our office that focuses on creating content for Snapchat. And as a result of that, Mashable content is now shared 3 times every second of every day. And really the big trend that we're looking at now is that social has become really primarily a mobile activity. If you look at all the big social networks now, the vast majority of their usage is on smartphones. And if you look at the social networks that have emerged over the last couple years, sites like Instagram, Vine, and Snapchat, they're almost 100% mobile in terms of their usage. And this represents a good thing for us. It's really fueled Mashable's growth. We're actually now reaching 35 million people every month. September was actually our best month on record. We had 42 million unique visitors on Mashable around the world. And we now have social distribution of 18 million people across various social sites. And kind of the 2 big trends, 50% of our audience now accesses Mashable via mobile devices, and another 50% from links they discover on social networks. And these 2 trends are incredibly interlinked. And a result of that, not only now are we focused on distribution, but we're also thinking about how we can stay ahead of changes in technology by building some of our own. So one of the things we really have started to realize over the last few years with these trends emerging is that Mashable's not just competing with other media companies anymore. We're competing with people's friends, with their families, with the celebrities, and with the brands that they follow on social media, right? Because that's where people are finding our content. So what we tried to figure out is how can we use technology to get better at what we do? And what we came up with is a platform we call Mashable Velocity. So we hired a team of data scientists, people that are experts in artificial intelligence, and set out to build an algorithm that could give us a competitive advantage in the media business. Now what this algorithm does, I'll probably oversimplify it a little bit, but essentially it crawls millions of URLs and social signals to identify within minutes the stories that are going to go viral next all across the internet. So it's scanning millions of URLs, social sites, and behind the scenes, there's a dashboard telling our editorial team what are the next big viral stories. You might see velocity on the site in terms of the spark lines that are on some of our stories. I should also note that velocity has become a key part of our social distribution strategy. So now, as soon as we publish something on Mashable, within a matter of minutes, we know how viral that story is likely to become, which informs our social media and distribution team of what they should share, where they should share it, and when they should share it. So what we're now looking to do is figure out how do we connect velocity to our advertising products. So earlier this year at Cannes, we announced a partnership with the agency 360i, where they're actually going to be using a customized version of the Velocity dashboard to inform content marketing and advertising strategy. So basically being able to see what's buzzing online, what's about to go viral, and what type of things should they be creating content around for the various brands that they work with. Now, the other big piece of technology that we've been building to adapt for all these changes in consumption patterns has been responsive design. So Mashable was one of the first media brands to launch a fully responsive website at the end of 2012. And what that essentially means is as we saw this huge surge in mobile usage taking place on Mashable, how are we going to build an optimal experience for that? So what we did is create a responsive site. And what that means is, there's more than 5,000 different devices that access Mashable every month. But now with our responsive design, we'll serve an optimal experience for whatever device you're coming to the site on. So if you're accessing Mashable via a desktop, you'll get the 3-column display with big, beautiful imagery. If you're accessing it on what I guess is now known as a small smartphone, you'll get a 1-column display. And if you're on an in-between device like an iPad mini or the new iPhone 6 Plus, you'll get a 2-column display of Mashable. Now, this has also been, on one hand, it's been incredibly transformative for our readers. We've seen engagement on mobile devices more than double over the last couple of years. But it's also really answered the question of how do you monetize on mobile, right? Because 2-3 years ago, I think all publishers were essentially really under-monetizing on mobile. They weren't able to serve the same formats. And what this has allowed us to do, we're now selling essentially 100% of our campaigns are completely cross-platform and at comparable CPMs. Now, in the same way we think about social as a key distribution platform for us, we also think about hardware in a very similar fashion. So in addition to building out velocity and having our social media and distribution teams, we're also building apps for devices. So we just launched a new iOS app last week. We have a great Android app, an iPad app, and we're even on Google Glass. So even though Google Glass probably only has tens of thousands of users at this point, it's applying that same philosophy, right? If Google Glass becomes a major consumption place for media in the future, Mashable wants to be the leading brand there. So we have a team dedicated to ensuring that we're on emerging hardware platforms as well as software platforms. Now, the other thing that we've really done in our business from early on is create advertising that we truly believe does add to the user experience. And I know there's probably a ton of talk about branded content and native advertising here this week, so I won't spend much time on it. But really how we look at it at Mashable is really finding the themes that can be a meeting place between brands and their interests and what our readers want to consume. So I think this is a great example of that. It's a program we did with Intel earlier this year where we essentially found some of the most innovative young people around the world and told their stories through documentary videos. One of them, this kid Raul, who's 19 years old in Romania there in the top left of your screen, he invented a self-driving car at the age of 19, which is pretty impressive, right? So this is just an example of the type of work we do with brands, and it's the type of content Mashable users are already consuming. And what we found with our branded content is that it often gets the same or even higher engagement than some of our editorial stuff because we are able to find that balance on the site. Now, the other thing we did when we launched our redesign to support our branded content efforts is develop our own advertising platform. So we created something we call Mashable Lift, which is basically our solution. It's our version of promoted tweets or Facebook-sponsored stories, if you will, where we can take that branded content and amplify it in the stream on Mashable, our homepage, and other placements around the site. What we're also able to do, and we find growing interest in, is actually take a brand's social assets, so their YouTube videos, their Vines, their Instagrams, and lift them in the homepage on Mashable. And what we see with these units is they get engagement, click-through, et cetera, that's many multiples greater than what you get with your typical run-of-site display advertising. Now, the last area I want to talk about, and one of the reasons I'm especially excited to be here this week, is that Another thing we're focused on right now is expanding our reach to new audiences through smart partnerships. And one such partnership we announced earlier this year was a deal with Telemundo, where we're co-creating content, video content, for the US Hispanic marketplace. And we're actually already distributing some of the video that we produce in-house on their platforms and seeing some great results from that, but soon we'll be actually developing content together, which is a great opportunity for Mashable to reach entirely new audience here in the US. Another audience we're really focused on growing through partnerships is YouTube. We really view YouTube as a key platform for audience acquisition in the future. If you look at the demographics, there's more millennials on YouTube than watch any cable network in the US, which we think is all the signal we need to invest aggressively in it. So some of the things we've been doing is partnering with YouTube talent, and I think we'll hear about that in a little bit as well from Beatrice. So a couple of examples here. We have a show every day we call the Mashable Minute, which is hosted by Elliot Morgan, who's a YouTube personality who's built up a really big fan base and brought his audience along with him to the Mashable channel. And this is a really great video we did a few weeks ago in collaboration with Sesame Street, that's Cookie Monster there, at a news desk with John Oliver. And the last thing I'll leave you with, another big area of focus for Mashable right now, is on global expansion. So Mashable has always had a very international global audience. About 50% of our readers actually reside outside the US. But until this year, we really weren't doing anything to cater to them. So just last week, in fact, we announced the launch of our UK office with editorial and sales teams. We have an editor down in Australia now. We have partnerships in Australia, Europe, and Canada. We have essentially 90% of our audience covered now with boots on the ground, which is really exciting for us. And one of the things I'm really excited about this week is to really learn more about Latin America and see if there's opportunities for Mashable to expand down there as well. With that, thank you very much, and looking forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you.